On the registration form, he had to put where he came from, where he was born, who his parents were, and his wife, and where he lived, and if he had any children, and he certainly crossed out. This was the registration sheet on arrival to Buchenwald. He put that he had no children, presumably because he didn't want me discovered, you know, at that time, and was an attempt to save me. My name is Judy Young-Drake. I was the hidden child, if you like, but I kind of remained hidden for the rest of my life almost. The big issue of my life is, of course, not just that my parents and my family were killed in the way in which they were killed merely for who they are, but the fact that I could have found out what happened, I could have found out who I was. I was torn away from my roots, if you like, but she was completely unwilling and unable to tell me anything at all about my parents, about being Jewish. I was not brought up as a Jew. I found out much, much later on, when I first found a friend of my father's in Israel, that my father, in fact, didn't die in Auschwitz, but was transferred with a couple of thousand other Hungarian Jews to one of the subcamps of Buchenwald. Now, I found this out first from a man called Tzvi Kedmi, whom I met in Israel on my first trip to Israel in 1990, and I was searching around for people who had known my father or my parents. That my father survived until pretty much the very end, that is, until the camp was liberated by the Americans in April, or very close to that, just before that, when the Germans, when the camp was being dissolved, and people were either left there simply to die, or transferred to other places, or force marched to other nearby camps further into Germany. According to Tzvi Kedmi's telling of the story, they had been put on a train. He wasn't sure to where. He ended up in Theresienstadt at the end of that train journey. But at the very beginning, the train was bombed by the Allies. Mr. Kedmi, Tzvi Kedmi, put in his Yad Vashem sheet that he submitted, he just put, he was shot on the way, but it doesn't say, you know, it's kind of a half a line, I don't know on what way. But he told me that he still remembers seeing my father around the time when they were put on the train, but he didn't see him afterwards. And at that time, my father told him that I had been left in the care of this cousin, and he also told him that there was a letter that he'd written to me and he wanted to repeat it, and there was a letter and a ring, actually his wedding ring or my mother's wedding ring, I don't know, in which he expressed his wish that I should be brought up as a Jew. And Tzvi Kedmi always felt, until the moment that I've met him in 1990, he had a bad conscience about the fact that, in fact, he hadn't. They tried, apparently. They tried to get me from Budapest, and I have letters that were exchanged between him and his wife's father, who was still in Budapest, who had gone to all kinds of trouble to see if they could get me away from the situation that I was in and take me to Israel on one of the transports of children, surviving orphans.